talking about being real, and I feel like being real is a topic that always comes up again and again.
I mean, I think so, but I also think that actually it's coming to a head as communities become more visible. I do feel like there's this kind of sense of small groups of people trying to kind of own real, and it just, I mean, I do get it from our perspective. Actually, it's quite dangerous to be told that you're not real, because being not real means that you don't get good health care, you don't get respect, you become a target, and no one cares if you get the shit beaten out of you. But in a sense, I don't know what being real is.
Exactly. Should we try and define what people mean when they say being real?
Yeah.
So I think we all know what it means when someone says about being real or authentic.
But what does it mean to you?
Okay, so to me, being real is about living my authentic life and actually being who I am and being able to express who I am and being seen as how I feel, you know. So that didn't always match up for me, and so I made efforts to kind of head in the right direction with hormone surgery, and now I inhabit the body that I'm in. I feel very comfortable. So that's what real means to me. But I think when people talk about a real woman or real man, I think we're talking about something else entirely, aren't we?
I think completely, because for me, being real, if it means anything at all, I was saying to Al earlier on about paintings. One of my favourite paintings is a painting by Frida Kahlo called The Little Deer, which I adore. And I found in like an online painter's service where they would paint me an exact copy.
Oh wow!
For £300. And first of all, I thought, that's quite good, but actually it won't be the real thing.
Right, and I see.
But then I thought, well, actually, but it will be more real to me, because if I buy it, it will exist in my house. I'll have a relationship with it as a real object.
True.
It's not a painting that exists over there. So in a sense, being real to me means being present. And I can't honestly say that I want to ascribe any qualities of femininity or masculinity or womanhood or you know, feminism. I just think that being present, and that's something that we should all kind of aspire to. And actually, in a way, notions of being real mean actually they stop us from being present, because we all go, well, how do I be real then if I don't feel real?
So in a mindfulness kind of way, you know, being present, being
absolutely,
like we're all very present. It feels like in this conversation, we're not checking our phones.
No,
we're not
absolutely.
I also feel like when they say real women or whatever, what they're really saying is normal women, normative women that fit a very specific type of womanhood.
So there's no actual rule book. So what would you say that was? What would the
it's sort of the same old thing, when it's just like a woman that is very feminine, she's white, she's beautiful, she fits into the standards of what women are supposed to do.
She's heterosexual.
How they're supposed to behave. Heterosexual sexuality. And I sort of feel like that's the message that they're sometimes sending, even though a lot of them are also lesbians as well.
Yeah, because that's what...
Yeah, but
there is a difference in terms of that.
There is a difference.
Because, I mean, and I think that if you kind of dig deeper, I wonder if it is that kind of heteronormative model, because I think in a way it is about an absolute fear. For me, the crux has always been the idea or the notion that in order for trans identities in its widest form to be accepted, you have to accept that somebody can be a woman with a penis. And you have to accept that somebody can be a man with a vagina. And that's our truth that seems to be kind of wrapped up in all these arguments, because the argument is, well, unless you're born with these genitals, you can never be. You're always going to be aping us or copying us.
Yes.
And in a way, for me, there's a real beauty and kind of a real truth in the fact that you know, you can be. Genitals don't contain gender.
Yes.
They just don't. Their skin, they're like our hand or like an ear. And my ear isn't gendered. I mean, it's not though, is it? And my nose isn't gendered. And if you were to lose your ear and you had an ear transplant from the back of a mouse, they wouldn't say, well, we're going to grow a female ear or a male ear. It's
an ear,
It's an ear.
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous.
And they wouldn't say you're not a real human just because you had an ear transplant.
Absolutely. No, they wouldn't. And they wouldn't say, well, you can't have a certain kind of hearing aid. I find it really kind of dangerous and difficult and problematic that if you follow the kind of logic of the argument, which is that if you were born with a penis, you can only be male, it kind of posits and gives the penis such power.
It does.
Yeah. and such kind of power of kind of almost like a malevolent power,
Beyond,
which is kind of sexist, because then it posits a vagina as having a kind of submissive power. It kind of it feeds into kind of ideas of heteronormativity that are even more banal than just saying actually it's perfectly feasible for somebody to be completely male, whatever that means, socially constructed, naturally, but have a vagina and use that vagina. It's still entirely possible for them to be male.
And it's about getting creative with our bodies too, you know, and about really, really working with what we have. You were talking yesterday, you had a question from someone in Iceland who was asking about how to explain to a young child how a trans man could get pregnant and what that's all about.
Yeah, and it was sort of this thing that she said, the way she phrased it was, how do I tell my 10-year-old boy that this man who used to be a girl is now pregnant? And it was just like this weird phrasing that she used, and it's like she doesn't really see that man who got pregnant as a man. She sees him as someone who was a woman and is essentially a woman. And it was just the way she phrased it.
It's like a lingering thing in a way that you kind of feel like, I mean, even in my life, I still might get people giving me advice about how to kind of maintain the kind of feminine, which I don't give a fuck about. I mean, I care about being present, and being present means you're not spending your time thinking, do I fit in? Do I pass? And I get the issues of safety, but those are to do with other people, and I'm not interested anymore. For me, being present is about me being happy, not the rest of the world kind of accepting me as being fine. And I think that it's always true when they do those stories kind of about the pregnancy, they always refer back to, but they make a real point. They always find a really manly picture of the man pregnant.
How could this,
with like a fag
because they want to show the polar opposite,
to really show the kind of polar opposite, but then go
whoa,
first man to be pregnant, and you think, well,
it's not the first man,
it's just really silly what you're doing. It's such a waste. But in a way, that whole kind of like the recent stuff about, I suppose, the recent stuff about being real, about who's real and who's not real, like kind of misses a kind of crucial thing, which is about feeling real. And I think for the trans community, historically, we've had to jump through so many hoops to being real, to proving them that we are real, that actually we've spent very little time kind of feeling real. And that's really important for our kind of mental well-being.
Massively.
And we go through this long process of trying to find reasons why we're real. We like try to reason with people, for example, saying, we have this sort of a brain, so that's why we're trans. And we always come up with these ridiculous ideas to prove that we're trans, instead of just being ourselves, which should be the only proof we need.
Exactly.
I agree. I think that's a really good point, because I think that we feed into that as much as we kind of respond to it in a, you know, it's kind of like some of the recent kind of debates that I've seen, which I have to say I find incredibly banal, because I'm not sure that I don't feel like I'm female because I ever played with dolls, or I don't feel like I'm female because I grew up feeling like, I mean, I was brought up by tomboys essentially, and I grew up feeling like a tomboy.
And that's a totally valid.
And that's a totally valid, absolutely. And in a way, I don't think that we should feed into it by trying to say, well, actually, if they looked at all of our brains and took slices of our brain, they'd see that we had a female kind of part that was pulsing. Female.
Therefore you're authentic as trans.
Yes, we definitely
you're trans enough.
I don't mind not being. Absolutely, I am me enough, and I am present enough. And I think in whatever I am, I think that we're doing good for society, because we're loosening the whole lot of them up.
And I think it's because being real, we associate with something empirical and something we can prove, something we can see.
Absolutely.
And when something is real that nobody can actually see and explain, people get very uncomfortable, because they think, well, then anybody can be anything.
But
that's not the case.
That's not the case. But so socially everything is constructed. The whole idea of femininity, being a woman, being a man, everything is socially constructed. So we can't actually see everything. We can't explain everything with science or with brains or with body parts, because that's not how life works. It's not how the world runs.
I think that's a really nice thing to think about it, kind of like in terms of that there is a kind of hierarchy, and there is a kind of empirical hierarchy, which, because I think as you were talking, I was just thinking about that painting by Frida Kahlo. And I assume, or I imagine, that it's worth so much money that it's kept in a vault somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
And it's
never
real,
used.
Never seen, in the dark, never used, kept out of light so that it doesn't fade.
Yeah.
You know, certainly with a lot of those Van Gogh paintings that are very real, they're kept away. So they have no sense of reality to any of us. No. Whereas a print or a phone cover that's got a kind of the Frida Kahlo painting printed on it.
Sure,
it's real.
Use it day to day. Yeah.
We have a relationship with it, and that's more of the thing. I think that I'm a bit sick to death of people trying to stop trans people from having a relationship with life by continually saying, well, you're not real, so in some way you can't engage.
Yeah.